Hi guys, my name is Christina and welcome to my channel and welcome to yet another episode of the podcast. This episode, as I guys promised you, we're continuing working on the last page of chapter 8, and this, as I definitely mentioned in the previous episode, that this page was kind of annoying in the sense that it really took more work and more time and more dedication than I expected it to be, and it's really challenged me. I thought, oh my god, it's the last page, it's one panel, it's gonna be easy breezy, but no, it was actually not easy at all. Like every time I would work on it, I realized, oh my god, this thing needs to be added, this thing needs to be added, and actually this needs to be thought through and whatnot. And one of the things that I realized need to be thought through is these buildings, because originally where I was pulling from, like the image that I was actually copying as a base, it was the image that I drew for chapter 3, and the village that was there was far away, and now I'm adding this extra village. I'm adding Afolia as a village, and it's closer, so I couldn't get away with just drawing lights, like distant lights of some buildings. Plus it's winter, and at winter, even it's night, it appears lighter. So I had to actually go and draw streets and draw rooftops and draw all of the buildings, and my god, that took a lot of time. And actually, now that I'm thinking, maybe I drew too many buildings, because I know that the residents, it was like 354 residents of this village, and I'm not sure if I have too many buildings. What if I have actually 300 buildings? It can be. We're not going to think about it too much. But actually the amount of people living in this village is very important, because it's kind of the clue of what is happening, because we know that our main character, like the key to this world that she has, is protected by 354 shadows, and shadows are kind of souls of dead people who are trapped. And then we learned that also there's a village that had exactly the same amount of residents that was wiped out. You know, it's kind of like a number that helps us connect all of that. But overall, just, drawing this village that I thought was going to be easy took a lot of time, because I had to draw all the buildings that is there. And after I finished drawing buildings for Folia, the village that is closer, I realized, you know what, now those silly distant lights of the Flowering Torn, the sister village of Afolia, looking a little bit too simplified. And overall, this has kind of been my problem lately, is that I just keep not liking myself simplifying things. I actually got a comment on one of my videos, I think on the podcast as well, when somebody was suggesting that I draw a little bit more, like so that you can see like brush strokes and whatnot. It actually, it's not the first time I'm getting this comment. I'm getting it also in real life, and I can totally appreciate that people like more brush strokey things, but this is just not my style. I like to polish everything as much as possible. I don't really like seeing brush strokes. I like brush strokes to help me to achieve realistic texture look, and I definitely myself love when you see brush strokes and you see like the kind of more of a raw painting, but it's not something that I necessarily like doing for my own drawing. So I realized that I needed to go and draw through a little bit of Flowering Torn. Also, this frozen lake posed another struggle for me, because not like a struggle, but the thing is, I never drew a frozen lake before, and every time I'm drawing something for the first time, because I'm an experienced artist, it's not like I cannot draw it, I have to learn how to draw it, but it's always like a little bit of a learning curve. I need to look at the object, realize what makes certain thing look like this thing. For example, with the frozen lake, I need to realize, like from the looking afar, how does the banks look like, how does the surface of the of this lake, how does this ice reflect light, and all of that. So it's like I have to analyze what makes it look real, just analyze the pictures of frozen lakes and whatnot. Another thing that I was struggling with, you see the reference that I'm using, it's kind of like a huge lake glacier, but the snow was cleared up. Actually, if you look at the actual frozen lakes and the locations that are very northern, like for example, I'm thinking of Lake Louise in Banff National Park is in Alberta, and because I just came from Alberta, I went to Alberta for a vacation because I deserved it, because I finished chapter 8 and I'm very proud of myself, and I went to Alberta to celebrate with mooses and elks. It was great. But I was there in winter as well, and if you look at the lake in the northern location, where like mountain location where there's a lot of snow, the lake will be covered under snow. So, but I cannot have it for this image because I needed people to see that it is lake there, because this lake is very important for identifying the location. So I had to draw kind of like this to force this lake to be just icy and not snowy. For example, as if those guys had a special team of people who are clearing the snow from the lake all the time, which is obviously not the case. But yeah, this was another challenge that I had to do. And this is kind of like the slogan for this last page. It's just a lot of things that I've never drawn. Another thing that I've never drawn is snow. I mean, not like never drawn. I drew snow here and there because I already had flashbacks for this character and they had snow in there, but I'm not feeling like I drew it enough, and I didn't draw like a snowy landscape like this where you can see that things go far in the distance. So there's this kind of another challenge that I need to overcome. I need to again analyze things and realize like how, like, what makes snow look like snow and what makes snow look like snow when it's far away, and just to realize how snow catches light, how does snow look in shadow, how does the shadow versus light like coloring looks like. Because honestly, every time you draw anything, it's all about, to make it look real, is all about, well, maybe not all about, but mostly about how the light interacts with the objects, how the light interacts with certain texture, with certain color in this texture, and all of those kind of aspects. And how the object reflects light, reflects other colors around it, reflects environment. How does it, like, basically reflectiveness of this object, and does it has like the light that bounces inside, like subsurface scattering. This is how we call it in VFX when we render it. Basically, the idea is when the light hits the object, like how does the light behave. Subsurface scattering is when the light actually gets into the object and bounces within the object, create almost this effect of the object being like glowing from inside a little bit. You can see this with our own bodies. If you look at your fingers against the light, you will see that your fingers kind of almost glow red a little bit. Is because the nature of our flesh is that it has this aspect of subsurface scattering, and fingers are kind of so thin, and you can actually see them being a little bit kind of transparent, and the light bouncing around and reflects red. Snow kind of has the same effect. So that's why when you look at the snow, it has like this light that bounces inside, so it has the same effect. So it's like that's mostly, if you're trying to draw something, this is what it mostly comes to. It's just realizing how the thing like works within certain light conditions, and you have to understand the material and the behavior of the material. It's really a lot of things about drawing are about light. So. And actually, here, funny, I realized that this is something that happens to me a lot. I mirror my images several times during the drawing process because I want to make sure that they're correct, nothing is off. And when you mirror, you can definitely judge it better. And sometimes I forget that I mirrored, and I draw certain objects that are very side sensitive, like it's important which side they're on, like text, or like which side, which shoulder pigeon is sitting on. And sometimes I just forget if the picture is mirrored or not mirrored, and I just draw it on the side that it's supposed to be. But if it is mirrored, it's going to be on the wrong side. I had a page in chapter 7 that came out recently where the letters on the girl's duffel bag are written mirrored, because I wrote the letters when the picture was mirrored and didn't realize. I have to fix that. So yeah, so it's just a funny remark. So as I told you guys in the previous episode, in this one I will be actually showing how I'm adding more detail. So even though the previous episode, the page already looked pretty much like finished and complete or close to that, it was not at all close to that. Consider it's a finished background for the page. I will be adding a lot more characters to the page. And one of them is this child that I drew. And another one is something that I'm starting drawing right now. It's those monsters that are called firstborns, and they appeared in my podcast already several times, but I just didn't mention them again. Basically, firstborns are the creatures that exist in this world. In this world, the idea is there's two gods, darkness and light, and each of those gods created their own kind of humanoid creatures. Darkness created Kondra, like this guy with the tail that you can see over here, but it's believed that before creating Condra, they created kind of those creatures before, kind of testing waters that are more animals at this point. And in this world, they're called firstborns because kind of like they were born before Condras, and Condras are secondborn. So those creatures, they are actually sentient. And now that they're appearing in the story, they are... we don't know exactly how smart they are yet because they appear in a disadvantage. So it's like something is a little bit wrong with them and people just perceive them as monsters. They have their own culture. They're very advanced too. But unfortunately, we're not seeing them in their best state. Like now they're a little bit more on the animalistic side. And another character that I'm adding is this Jester, the character that I'm drawing right now. And that's also started challenging me because as I was drawing her, like this is a she, I also, like, it's very important how I drew them because this is the first time I'm drawing a Jester, this type of character. And Jester is like a job position. That's what it means. Jester, it's like their title at the court. It means they are working really closely with the ruler of this reality, and they're kind of advisors and very skilled craftsmen. And they're called Jesters. And this is the first time I'm drawing them, actually. So I never drew them before. I had a lot of concepts and ideas of what I want for them. But objectively, this is the first time I draw them. And those characters are very important. And they have kind of like uniform. And that's... I cannot just draw whatever I want at this point because those characters are important. They're going to be appearing again and again. And we're going to be recognizing them by their uniform. And their uniform is also very important to kind of... uniforms don't come out of nowhere. Uniforms always represent something, and uniforms they have a lot of symbolism on them. They have a lot of functionality built into them. So uniforms are actually very complex item of clothing, I think, and especially if you are creating some sort of uniform for your fantasy world, you gotta make sure you do a good job because it can get like... It's something like it's an element of world building. Even though it's just someone's clothes, this is important type of clothes. They talk a lot about the politics of the world, of how certain systems are structured. And these Jesters, as I said, they are close advisors and skilled craftsmen that work for the ruler of this reality. They work for Kalianol. This is almost like a capital that they have. Not exactly, but this is kind of where the ruler resides. And for the ruler, that is Penumbra. And Penumbra there's a lot of cultural kind of baggage there and a lot of meaning what Penumbra represents. And they kind of represent Penumbra when they travel and when they go on Penumbra's mission. So the way their uniform should tell us also a lot about Kalianol, the city of Kalianol, Penumbra as the ruler, and about this world, and a lot about like how those institutions came to be. So this is very heavy stuff that I wanted to include to be seen through this uniform. So I'm basically designing the uniform right now, and I also realized how important for me to design it right. So as you can see, this is basically not quite ideal situation as if you're drawing your comic and you're creating things like this as you go. It would really help if you already have like a world building thought through, or you're already working on something and it will be like maybe like a plotter and you already plotted out what's going to happen later, so you can create those things that will affect the future because you know kind of what the future of the story and you know of the like world building development is. However, I did multiple videos in which I was talking that I realized I'm actually like a Panzer discovery writer, but that's kind of something that is a little bit challenging to do because I cannot necessarily plot those things, but I have to start thinking about certain, like my solution to this is that I started thinking about certain elements of the world ahead of the time, and I started planning them through like certain elements, and not necessarily how things, like all the things or all the things plot related, but some of them. To me also, I'm kind of not cheating here is because I already wrote a novel, so this first arc of the story is adaptation of the novel, and even though I'm redoing a lot of things, it's still I already have a lot of world building done, created, or at least the base of it, or like the main idea of it. So this is the one thing that helps me. So while I'll continue talking about uniform because I actually was struggling with those creatures with firstborns because I didn't want them to look quite like human. I wanted them to look human in certain ways, in certain poses, and kind of add this disturbances to them. But otherwise, I wanted them to look like their own creatures, type of thing. But back to uniforms is that there were several things that I wanted those uniforms to have. I wanted them to have gold metal color because gold metal is like it's the most valuable metal there. Like, no surprise, it's kind of valuable everywhere. But the idea why it's valuable is because it can hold the most amount of magic. So there are certain things in this world that can power magic. Like your soul can power magic, your flesh can power magic, wood, like live wood, dead wood can too, but not too much. It's very weak. Stones and metals, and different metals have also their own grades of how they can power magic. Basically, this is everything that can be used to as a battery for any magical activity. And because of this, gold is one of the most valuable metals, and that's why this metal should be present in the uniform of people who are from the highest institution, basically. Also, I want the uniform to be black and white. I wanted the back of the uniform be black, and I wanted the front of the uniform be white. Because Penumbra, as a ruler, the idea how they came to be is because there were wars between Kondra and Akandu, two races in this world, one created by light, one created by darkness, and there was like wars upon wars and upon wars. It was really, this world was in complete disarray, and Penumbras are the creatures that came. People don't really know from where. But there's a creature that appeared to be the perfect hybrid of between Kondra and Akandu, and they were able to negotiate the peace, and they also had the magical powers of their own that kind of made them a little bit more superior. They have extremely long lives, and they have very different powers, and the magic that they have is really linked to the world itself. So they're very specific beings, and basically how they came to be rulers is because they established peace, and they made a deal with Kondra and Akandu where, in exchange of Kondra and Akandu following their laws, they agreed to continue the peace that they established and make sure the wars never happen again. So this is kind of the premise, the ideal version of the ideology of how they came to be. And to me, it was very important that the colors that represent Penumbras and will also represent the people who are serving them, those gestures, would be black and white, because they kind of brought together black and white, darkness and light, and Kondra and Akandu. So I wanted to combine that, and I wanted to be two sides. So I wanted to be back to be black and front to be white, or vice versa. But I just think it's kind of more flattering when the back is black and the front is white. I don't know. Otherwise, it's just weird. The white really highlights the back. I don't know. It's kind of feels like you look like an elk when you have a white butt just showing really, really strongly. So I just decided to make back in the black in the back. And yeah, so kind of I had this idea that I wanted the uniform to be like this. I wanted to have gold metal implemented, and I wanted it to have black and white in there. And yeah, so I had a lot of reference. I had a lot of thoughts already, and I knew also that the uniform would have Indruas, and Indruas are basically what they call dragon skin, when they kind of take the dragon skin, clean it up, and use those colorful scales as a chainmail, because dragon skin is in it cannot be damaged by elemental magic, like one of the battle magic that they're using. So they are supposed to have this Indruya covering the front and the back of their body, kind of like the chest area, and they wanted and also Indruya is kind of expensive because getting dragon skin is not the easy process. You can only find dragons in very certain places, and also dragons are immune to offensive magic that they have. And that's why, obviously, it's not that easy to get across an Indruya. So it's also an expensive element, an expensive thing to have. And that's what I wanted them also to have. And also Indruyas, they have different colors. And I wanted also this, how you can differentiate between different gestures, because there are several of them. We just see one in front, and because she's kind of important for this scene, but we do see a couple in the back, so it's several gestures over there. And also we will see these gestures later on in the story. I wanted people kind of recognize them by colors. In this particular page, I'm not designing the front of their uniform, but I'm touching it up in the other pages that I will be working on, and I will be showing you guys. But just designing the overall concept of how it looks like was already very important, and once I designed that, it was easy to come up with the rest. So especially with the front, because I kind of when you get the idea and you kind of see that this idea is working, it's easier to continue and add details on top. So yeah, so this is kind of what was a little bit challenging to do. And yeah, overall, I also wanted to think how this kind of uniform works. What is the purpose? It's kind of like also about the clothes. Like what I like to think every time designing the clothes is like what utilitarian function they do. Like, are they warm? How warm they are? How exactly are they warm? Do they have fur? Do they have certain magic woven in that keeps it warm? What condition and what weathers they are designed for, what material they're made out of. So, for example, if you're in a rainy area or in the area that just has a lot of wetness, those your clothes should be one way. And if you're in the area that is very dry, your clothes should be different way. So what your clothes are made out of, are they made out of fabric, are they made out of leather? So this is a lot of like details. So I want clothes, not like obviously this uniforms, how they look like is important because they represent certain things, they represent their institution, but it's also very important for me to see how they function and functionally what they're meant for. So another thing with uniforms, usually when you look at them, you realize what people who are wearing them do, right? So if you see, for example, SWAT team members, their uniform, you can see that it's really designed for carrying a lot of weapons, protect them, and just enhance them. So it's like it has a bulletproof vest, they have a lot of pockets for all the gear, they have everything that they need to have all their weapons on them, and also they're very protective too. They have like a knees, like stuff on the knees and all like helmets and whatnot. So you can understand that this gear is very protective. And for example, if you see a police officer's uniform, you also understand like it communicates certain things as well, and you can understand what they're doing, like overall what things they're dealing with. Or uniform for, let's say, scuba diver, you realize that it's really designed to swim underwater. It's designed to provide them with oxygen. It's designed to protect their eyes. It's designed to give them ability to breathe underwater, and it's designed like it gives them like the ability to swim faster and be easier to just glide through the water, be less resistant, like the surface, or to be less resistant and more smooth. So this is the thing that you want to understand by uniform. And I didn't want to just draw uniform that is just aesthetically pleasing or like visually represent the institution. There gotta be more. And I decided like in this on this panel we don't necessarily see how it looks like, because also my world is not exactly like human, right? So things don't necessarily work just utilitarian. Like you don't look at thing and know how the thing looks like just by the visuals alone, or at least at this point of the story you cannot tell because you don't know how certain things are supposed to look like or how certain abilities manifest themselves in like visual form. So, but I still wanted to see how it would look like, and I would be showing it when people in uniform will be actually fighting and doing what they're supposed to do. And yeah, so this is like something that I was really thinking really hard, and I just another thing, like because I didn't want a uniform to be uniformal, like I don't want it to be exactly the same. I wanted certain concepts to be the same, but I still want like each member to have the uniform a little bit customized and a little bit have their own touch, and has its own like idea how they're wearing their uniforms. But because first of all they are not really huge organization, like the number doesn't have too many dressers, it's really very hand-picked, very skilled craftsmen and people who are very skilled in certain type of magic. So they wanted to have this feeling of uniqueness to them as well. And so yeah, this, as you can see guys, I'm thinking about a lot of things with this uniform and with this page overall. And with firstborns, the ones that I'm drawing right now, it's like I'm taking my sweet time drawing them, but it's not because I have to, think about something and figure out how they look like. I actually know by this point how they look like. I drew them. I drew one of them in chapter 7, and I drew several of them in chapter 8. So I kind of got the idea how they would be looking like. I kind of know the idea how to draw them. But still, this angle is a little challenging because first of all, they're standing uphill and those creatures are kind of walking. So I wanted to make sure it translates that those creatures are walking away from us towards the village. And even this creature that I'm drawing right now, he's looking back, but I wanted to be obvious that he is not turning. He he is just going forward and he is just giving a glance, so he's like turning his head to just look, but that's about it. He's just looking at nothing more. And this is something that I wanted to make sure that is translatable. And another thing, like also it's kind of a hard angle to show the creature that walks on their fourth and has maybe a little bit of a human traits, and to show them from the back going down the hill while we are on the hill. So it's a little bit of a clumsy shape. I didn't want to also like draw a lot of like butts just of creatures going down because it's just boring, and I wanted them to also create this composition. I wanted feel like they're going from everywhere, like create a feeling that there are a lot of them too. So it's just overall something that just took me time. You saw me redrawing things several times. It's mostly because it's just a little bit challenging over an angle. Like it's not just straightforward. It's like, yeah, I could draw them, but I need to draw them very specific way for this page, so the visuals look exactly how I need them to be. And also the way they interact with snow and the way they're walking, it's also like something that like I know how to draw them, but I still need to get better understanding, like a better grasp on how they're walking, because they have kind of human hands and human shoulders, but they don't have human legs, so they're a little bit different. So their back leg's going to be walking like, for example, every four-legged creature legs would walk. Well, not maybe ever, but like maybe like a dog, right? Or lion or something like this. But the front paws, because they also can shoot arrows, they have arrows and they can shoot them, and I wanted to see how those hands can look like. Maybe the elbows are a little bit different, so they can walk more like a dog but still have the functionality of more like a human hands when they are shooting arrows. I don't know, kind of like also a little bit of a complicated things to think about here. But yeah, overall they took me quite a lot of time to just figure out a nail, but at this point, as you see me drawing now, I kind of figured out how to make them look like. And this one that I'm drawing right now, that's the one that was coming along the first. Like this is the one that was it was like going along, it was starting to work, and then I kind of got the idea what I'm supposed to do with the rest. So I'm not going to be finishing all of those creatures actually in this episode, because in this episode I will be just getting more solid in how I want them to look like. I'm going to be solid in composition, and I still need to spend several hours on this one to just solidify and just go through all the details and make sure the interaction with snow is correct, and then realize I need to draw like all the footprints as well. So I hope you guys now understand when I was talking in previous episode that whatever I drew back then is almost like a background. It's a background for those creatures and for the gestures, and then I will be doing the same background thing that I'm doing in every time when I'm drawing, where I would kind of paint the original layer back again on the edges, because I'm just painting edges around the creatures with just the color that is around them to just help with the edges, but I will cover in it through the mask with the background layer. So yeah, and as I said, once I realized how to draw this like central creature, then it became really easy. As you can see, I'm kind of breezing through this particular creature. And also like this was important for me to show kind of like this is another thing that's happening, because as I'm writing my story or drawing my story, I'm learning stuff about the characters as I'm getting to draw them. So this female character, a gesture that is standing next to this creature, this character is important. So because this character is kind of important to the story of Kuroi and what happened to him in the past, like he really interacted with this particular gesture. So it was important for me to kind of think her story through a little bit and see why she was there, because there was some political shenanigans happening during this night. And yeah, I wanted to know why exactly she was there, why she was summoned, because every jester that is present there had their role there, and I just wanted to know exactly for myself what her role was. And I realized as I was drawing, and I just felt compelled to just draw her near this creature, and I realized, wait a second, she might be the one who actually brought these creatures in. And it's so funny because, like, I'm saying funny, but it's most like fascinating, because originally I just certain things I create and I don't know why I create them, and I don't know necessarily why they're a certain way. And I knew that those creatures, they destroyed Folia, this village, long ago, and those creatures are not native to the north. They kind of came from nowhere. And now 10 years later, they're just rampaging around the north and seemingly out of control and becoming more and more like animals the way they behave. And I realized, like, I wondered why it happened. And actually this female character, it's like we're seeing stuff in the past, she is actually not alive anymore. And I figured, wait a second, what if she was the one who was responsible of bringing these creatures there for this mission, and then after she died, maybe Kalin lost control over those creatures and they kind of started rampaging everywhere. Maybe that's the answer. And it's funny because like how I see and why I'm a discovery writer is because I don't know certain things about my story until I'm very up close and personal with it. I need to be very close to my story to know how certain things work and all the details about different characters and their motivation. So I cannot plan for that, because if I'm planning, it feels like forced. It kind of feels forced. But if I'm right there in the moment and I'm drawing, and as I'm drawing, I'm asking myself like questions about this character, why this character is there, why this character looks like this, why this character does certain things, and why this character is standing in this pose, like what is the story about this character. And as I'm this close, I'm actually drawing this character, I'm learning this character's story. So this is kind of how I work with that. I really need to be very close to understand what I want to do with this character. So, and that's kind of was the story with this gesture. As I was starting drawing her, and I realized I want to make sure she's holding her hand on this creature, either on their like face, like head, or on their shoulder. And as I just felt like doing this, and then I started doing it, I felt like, yeah, it feels like she is the one responsible for bringing it here, and now it makes sense that they're not really obeying anybody anymore. And I'm pretty sure there is more layers to this that I'm gonna learn later on, and this is kind of how it always works. I'm getting access to some sort of information in a certain amount of time, like in a certain moment of time when it is the right time for me to learn this information. But then when this information needs to be built upon and some other development are happening, I will be kind of told. I don't know, like I'm not a woo-woo like this. I'm not really believing in all this like stuff, but it really feels like it's like I'm learning things when I'm supposed to learn them about my story, and things come to me when I get to the certain point of the story, and then as I'm close, like the story kind of reveals itself to me. I don't know, actually maybe I should make a whole video about this and just how I don't know, that's because this really feels like a magical process to me. I don't know how exactly it works, but it certainly does work. But yeah, for this episode, guys, I will not be finishing this page still. And trust me, I'm just as disappointed as you probably are, because it's, as you can see, like this is the type of the progress that makes me, I need to force myself not to think a little bit too much, because as you can see, like work is happening everywhere. Like there's a lot of work with those creatures already put on the page, but nothing feels finished. Like it's kind of unfinished everywhere. Or by the way, I was telling you that I will be doing the same thing that I do with my backgrounds. Basically whatever I drew in the previous episode, now I'm using, as you can see on the right corner, in the right top corner, as you can see, I'm using that page without those monsters and kind of painting it on with the mask. And I'm like, yeah, so I'm just finishing, like patching on all of this kind of small sketchy elements, just clean it up, because this is kind of the difficult moment personally for me when I'm drawing and I see like a lot of mess, like a lot of kitchen type of vibe. So it almost feels like nothing is really finished. And yeah, so this is something that is a little bit difficult for me to go through, because I like to see the progress. I like to see that things are getting better. And sometimes when everything kind of is at work, it feels like I keep working, but nothing is getting finished. And it's just at this moment I need to just stop thinking and keep working, just force myself not to think. That's kind of my recipe for success in this sense, because otherwise it drives me a little bit crazy. And this is what I'm doing now. Basically, I'm cleaning up, and what it helps me with is just make sure that I get the silhouette of the characters very clean, so there is no kind of this garbagey, trashy looking lines and all of that. So it becomes very clean and becomes very obvious what exactly I need to draw. Basically, it's easy, and then I just kind of force myself and just go through things that are not drawn and finish them. For example, okay, this creature is not done, finish this creature. Okay, then now this one is not done, finish this one. So it really becomes almost like a checklist, and you have to start finishing things, because otherwise you can be really stuck in this kind of progress zone when you're constantly improving something, constantly, doing the work, but nothing feels like it's progressing. So to me, that part is important. So yeah, I will not be finishing it here, but there is a couple of hours that I still need to put in there. And even though it is indeed like the page, like chronologically the last page of chapter 8, it's not exactly the last page I drew. I had to draw a couple more panels for the same location, but I needed to figure out the uniform and the creatures and how they are before that, because those scenes are set in the very same location. And I will be drawing the front of this gesture, so stay tuned for that, guys. But yeah, other than this, how you guys been? I had a great vacation in Alberta. I'm probably gonna make a video about this, and I just refilled my well, because every time I'm thinking about North Province, I'm thinking Banff and Jasper National Park. I'm thinking Canadian Rockies. This is what I'm thinking, because I just love this place, and every time I'm there, it just makes me very happy. So by this time that I'm recording this, I actually finished chapter 8, even though I will be showing you the drawing process. The chapter 8 is officially finished. I'm already drawing chapter 9, and I will be sharing all the recordings on there shortly. But yeah, that's how I've been. Let me know how you guys been doing, and thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope to see you in my next one. Thank you so much, guys. Bye.